BionicDance is filmed in front of a live studio audience.
How do you know if what you believe most passionately is true? It's a good question whether you're a Christian watching this, or a Muslim, or a believer in some other faith, or an atheist. How do you know if what you believe is true?
You can't know. Nobody can really know anything. We can just be so convinced that, barring new data, we've reached the most reasonable conclusion. But the most important part is the data, analyzing it objectively without bias and accepting the results. It shouldn't matter how passionately you believe it. If that's the metric you're using, then your results will always be suspect, if not tainted. Let's do this. Greetings, fellow space travelers, BionicDance here. Once again, we're dealing with our old friend, Andy Bannister. I would have passed him by, but this video made me grumpy. Anyone who knows me knows that my biggest pet peeve about religion, barring perhaps theist treatment of the LGBT folk, is faith. How it's defined, when it's expected, and when it's reliable. Spoiler alert, it's not.
One way you can know, or one way you can put what you believe to the test, is by exposing your deeply held beliefs to critique and the best challenge from the other side. And that's increasingly hard to do in our internet-connected age, because far from expose us to a wide range of ideas, what the internet has become for many of us is an echo chamber.
Maybe for a lot of people. Perhaps. Then again, have a look at these Facebook groups. Debate and discussion, religion, science, and philosophy. Theism versus atheism. Debate faith. Atheism versus theism, the real debate. Islam, Hinduism, Christianity, atheism, and others, friendly discussions. Many of these groups have members in the tens of thousands, and they're obviously open to all ideas. So maybe this internet echo chamber isn't quite as big as Andy thinks.
There was a piece of research done around the time of the last American election which looked at both Democrats and Republicans and their behaviour online, and it discovered that Republican groups on places like Facebook only ever quoted opinions from writers sympathetic to them, and the same was true of Democrats.
Which study is this? He doesn't give a name, the link isn't in the video's description. How can I verify or respond to this? I tried to Google it, but the terms are so broad that I couldn't find it. Regardless, I know it's not true on the left. The news shows I watch on YouTube, the Facebook groups I'm in, also my Facebook friends, are all quoting Republicans all the time, even if only to point out something they said that's completely chowder-headed. And I've seen theists quote atheists from time to time. Well, misquoting them, straw-manning them. I find that most atheists are very interested in their integrity, however. We'll almost always post links for the videos to which we respond in order to show we haven't misrepresented anybody. If we use external sources of data, studies, we'll link those as well, all in the name of honesty and full disclosure. Hell, I put out bloopers videos every now and then just to show people how perfect I'm not. Watching these goofballs argue amongst themselves Watching these gooseballs? If that isn't integrity and honesty, show me what is. So I'm not sure where Andy is getting these assumptions, but, well, he's wrong. That's all that can be said.
And the same happens in religious discussion. I know many Christians who only ever spend time talking to other Christians online. I know many atheists who spend all of their time just talking to fellow atheists and quoting atheist writers. They're living in an echo chamber. They're not putting their beliefs to the test.
I already showed how that's not true, on Facebook at least, and on both sides as well.
I was reminded of this recently when I was in Canada doing a university event, doing a dialogue, a discussion with an atheist friend. We do these university events from time to time in front of hundreds of students. And every time we dialogued before, my atheist friend would use this line at some point in the discussion. He'd say, "Andy, next time we do one of these university events, wouldn't it be fun if we switched places? I'll take the Christian side, you take the atheist side, and we can argue for the other camp. Wouldn't that be interesting?" And the first 2 or 3 times that he did this, I never quite knew how to respond. I hadn't fully figured out my response. But the last time he did this, a few months ago, this thought occurred to me. I looked across the stage at him and I said, "That's a great idea, Chris. Yes, we should think about that." And if I was going to do that, I would go over to the section of my library in my study and I'd pull down a dozen or 20 or so atheist books, and I named a few of them, and I'd begin, formulating arguments based on these atheist writers. Now tell me, which Christian writers and thinkers and philosophers would you pull off your shelf? Which would be your go-to books to begin formulating the Christian case? He looks at me and he said, well, I haven't sort of done any of that reading. And it was interesting. Immediately, the audience kind of sort of turned and began sort of laughing because it exposed that really what he was doing, with all due respect to my friend, was a rhetorical game. And it showed that he hadn't really, despite all these dialogues we'd done, really taken the time to think through the Christian position.
Serious question time. Which is more important, really? What various philosophers have written, or what the man on the street believes? Theory or application? If we're talking about science, the answer would obviously be theory. It's what makes application work. But in philosophy, that's another matter, especially in theology. Why are there so many religions? Why are there so many denominations within one religion? If you ask someone why they do or don't believe, you'll get different answers. When it's pointed out that God cannot be found by science, you'll usually be told either that's why we need faith or that's why belief isn't warranted. Now, I could read a book from a Christian philosopher and argue the case from that perspective, but if the vast majority of theists don't live their life by the principles in that book, yet they believe in a God, am I really arguing the Christian case? If Andy's book by an atheist claims that atheists must say a God does not exist, and he argues from that point of view, is he really arguing the atheist case when so many atheists say that non-belief is all that's required? For Andy to say that his friend hasn't really thought through the Christian position makes a very unwarranted assumption. If Christians who are not professional philosophers haven't done that scholarly reading either, does that mean that they haven't thought through the Christian position as well?
Unless you've put your beliefs to the test and exposed yourself to what others think, how can you know how seriously you believe what you say you do?
Really, Andy? Put your beliefs to the test. Okay. Let's do that. I've been making videos about atheism and theism for 10 years. That's right, a decade. I've been exposing myself to ideas from lots of religion, considering the points being made before I debunk the crap out of them. My comment section is always open, and while a drive-by from a theist is rare, it does happen. I don't censor debates. I only delete comments if they're spam with links to off-page commercial sites. Well, or if they're personally insulting, like telling me I'm ugly, providing no productive contribution to the discussion. I don't need that kind of crap. My ratings are always turned on. My videos are free spaces for open discussion. But you, Andy, your ratings are always turned off. Your comment section is always disabled. I sent you one of my video responses on Facebook. It says you've seen it, but did you respond in any way? Did you even watch it? Are you exposing yourself to atheist ideas or criticism of your own? Which of us is really living in an echo chamber, Andy? Me or you?
So if you're an atheist watching this and you've never really properly engaged with the best Christian arguments, the best Christian thinking, then I put it to you that one of three things is going on. First is that perhaps you don't actually really believe your atheism. Yes, you make occasional atheist noises, but you don't actually really believe it.
Given that atheism is having no belief in any gods, what is there to believe? Oh, but Andy probably means the kind of atheists who say that there is no God. Well, if that's the only kind of atheist that he thinks exists, it should be pretty clear that he hasn't done his own homework or rejects the ideas he doesn't like.
Second possibility is that you're lazy. You know there's thinking to be done. You know some of those atheist arguments and memes that you reshare on social media. They don't really make sense, but you just haven't bothered to do the thinking. Maybe you're lazy.
Wow, that is obnoxious. I mean, seriously, could you be more condescending? Funny thing, Andy, it's possible to understand an idea without having read tons of scholarly books. Some of us have sufficient intelligence to grok atheist and theist ideas on our own, just from discussions with others. And those memes? What makes you think we don't understand them? Given everything else we've seen today, I suspect that this is your own echo chamber, Andy. Have you actually verified what you're saying, or does it just make a good soundbite?
Or the third possibility, maybe you're afraid of where this road goes if you start looking into the evidence and the arguments and reading actually grown-up thought and the best arguments on the other side, and you've just shut that door, you've locked it, you've bolted it, you've nail-gunned it shut, because goodness knows what might happen to your atheism were you to actually put it to the test.
Again, this from the guy who never answers correspondence from people who don't agree with him, who shuts down his comment section. Have you put your theism to the test, Andy? Why does it seem that you are afraid of where this road will lead? Holy projection, Batman. I know almost no atheists who haven't dug deep within themselves to find what they do or don't believe and why. Most atheists I know used to be believers. I wasn't one of them. Closest I came to being a theist was trying to use the Force. Spoiler alert, it didn't work. But again, 10 years of debating religion. I think I'm good on the putting it to the test front. How about you?
Those really are the only three options that I can see. You don't really believe it, you're lazy, or you're afraid. Which is it?
Now he wants us to choose from the only three options he could think of. Funny thing though, last I checked, it's up to the theist to convince the atheist, not for the atheist to convince themselves. Between being condescending, offhandedly insulting people's intelligence, and engaging in blatant hypocrisy, if you're God's PR team, Andy, you really need to rethink your sales pitch. Until next time, fellow space travelers, this is BionicDance saying don't run on automatic. Instead, please think. Not rating and subscribing has been found to cause obesity, acne, and male pattern baldness in laboratory rats.
Yeah, whatever.
Don't let this happen to you. Be sure to rate and subscribe.